This is You're Probably Right. Entertainment first, everything else is just bonus. Opinions, all ours. Sometimes backed by research, but never the final word. There are always exceptions, so take it with a grain of salt and a slight dusting of chili powder.
Check it out. Episode 352, The Nice Guy Trap. Why sacrifice isn't the problem. Check it out. Before I go further, I think we need to define what a nice guy is, actually. Because when I say nice guy, I'm not talking about a man who is simply kind, polite, respectful, and considerate. It's too easy. It's too simple. I'm actually talking about the guy who keeps giving after wisdom told him to stop. And trust me, he's not listening to wisdom. The guy who takes everything personally. Some will call him emotional. Some will call him a romantic. Some will call him both. Some will call him stupid. The guy who is afraid to say no. The guy who is so grateful to have her that he'll do almost anything to keep her. The guy who believes that if he loves harder, gives more, works more, sacrifices more, forgives more, and understands more, eventually everything will work out because of his emotional intelligence, supposedly. He's the guy who will cook, clean, work overtime, cut the grass, shovel the snow, fix the cars, buy the gifts, warm up the cars in the morning, make the lunches, do the laundry, help raise the kids, or even mostly raise the kids, and still wonder why he feels unappreciated. Not because those things are wrong. And trust me, guys, if you're listening, I've been that guy. Because they're not. The problem is that he believes sacrifice can turn the wrong person into the right person. Oh, if it could. He believes effort, can compensate for incompatibility. He believes that love will conquer all, even in a situation where he possibly might have chose just the wrong person. He believes loyalty can create loyalty. He believes that if he just gives enough, eventually he'll receive what he's been given or what he's been giving. And that's the trap. He believes maybe if he wishes on a star to find out who you are, maybe when I wish upon a star, doesn't matter who you are. Because a nice guy isn't a man who loves too much. A nice guy is a man who mistakes sacrifice for discernment. He's not failing because he's kind, you understand? He's failing because he's investing virtues into someone he never properly vetted in the first place. You know, he's thinking, if I'm such a nice guy, why can't I keep a woman long term, forever? And that's the question. And I think most people answer it wrong, believe it or not. They'll tell you, you're too nice, you're too available, you're too generous, you care too much, you're too emotional, you give too much, you sacrifice too much. And you know what, honestly, personally, I really don't think that's the problem. I think we've diagnosed this from a long time ago wrong. You see, many men were raised to believe that being a good man means serving others. I'll die for you. I'll give to you. Providing, protecting, sacrificing, working hard, doing simply what needs to be done. A lot of us watched our fathers, grandfathers, uncles, men we looked up to, work themselves to the bone for their families. We were taught that love is sacrifice. You see, the Bible certainly teaches sacrifice, and if you were raised in a Christian home, you understand this. And if you weren't, check out your local Bible or keep listening and check out your local Bible. You see, love suffers long. How long is long? You see, greater love hath no man than this, that man would lay down his life for a friend, for his friend, for his woman. Christ laid down his life for us while we were yet sinners. It says that Christ died for us. The sacrifice came first. The response came later. Now, of course, God is omniscient. God knows everything. He understands everything. He is everything. He is everywhere. And he is all powerful. We're not. But we still have to follow in his footsteps. So, I don't believe that the problem is sacrifice. I don't believe the problem is commitment. I don't believe that the problem is covenant. The real question is, who are you sacrificing for? Because that changes everything. Many men spend years giving more and more and more into relationships and getting more bitter and more bitter and more bitter when it's not reciprocated. More time, more money, more patience, more forgiveness, more understanding, more effort. And eventually they start wondering why none of this seems to matter at all. And in some cases, it makes his woman more bitter and more angry at him. The more he tries to put band-aids on everything. It's almost like he feels like if she's literally trying to make things fall apart. And maybe there's some sense to that, I don't know. You see, I would say the answer is really simple. You gave the right things to the wrong person. So it's not for you to get cold with the next person you meet, with the next person you're in a relationship. The problem isn't that you sacrifice. The problem is that you chose someone who doesn't view relationships the same way you do. This is where I think many people really miss the point. The issue isn't men versus women, because that's not what I'm saying. The issue is covenant versus preference. Now, just that alone, and I'm going to go off a little bit script here, but think about it. Covenant means generally you signed on a dotted line, you made an agreement, right? You, your wife, and God. Covenant, right? What God has joined together, let no man put asunder. And then there's preference. And if you think about the word or you think about how we use it in the English language, it's like when it says, I prefer going left than going right. I prefer a beautiful woman than a not so beautiful woman, physically. But what happens when your preference changes for various reasons? Preference can change with the wind. Preference can change depending on what you need at that particular time. But covenant says no matter what comes your way, for sickness, sickness, richer for poorer, all that stuff, better for worse, richer for poorer, right? Covenant just says you're going to keep on keeping on regardless of what hits you. Preference says, well, I'm not so happy that it's raining today because it's November. Maybe that's just how you feel in November, whereas it might be, say, the first week in July and you're begging for rain because you planted vegetables. So you would prefer that it rain. You understand? Prefer, preference. Preference goes a lot of the time with your emotions, with your feelings at that particular time. And it can change. Whereas if you're in a covenant now, it is what it is. This is what you're doing. So I made that clear, right? A covenant-minded person thinks differently. When problems arise, they ask, how do we fix this? A preference-minded person says or asks, do I still want this? And those are absolutely, completely different foundations. And the issue, I believe, sometimes is that, and not only for men, if there's women still listening, hopefully, because I think, alienated you a little bit here. But the reality is, if you have the mindset under covenant, you're going to do what you're supposed to do because that is a solid foundation. But preference, as I said before, kind of moves and goes the wind that signs that, it goes with the times, right? What we feel like. If a person believes commitment is permanent, right? And the other person believes commitment lasts only as long as they're happy, I'm not happy anymore. You're not giving me what I need. I need more security, or I need more emotional support. I need more closeness. I need more hugs. Eventually, those two belief systems will collide. Now, let's just say it's a guy and he's in a marriage and he says that for better, for worse, richer, for poor, sickness and health and all that, I'm here. And he tries to hold on to this with a woman who maybe has done a lot less in the relationship, who is maybe holding out sex in the relationship, and maybe he chose this particular woman because of how beautiful she was, and now she's cut off that part of the relationship. What's he gonna do? Well, some men will stay there and suck it up for as long as they can. Some guys will say, up, forget that. I'm out. I'm going to go check to see if I can find something else, someone else who will do what I need them to do, you know? And that's where sometimes this argument goes. It's like, is it chicken and egg? Is it who was holding out first that caused somebody to walk out? Or was it the person who walked out after somebody was holding out? Or they walked out because of all kinds of different reasons, not the smallest of which was the fact that he wasn't getting what he thought he needed in the relationship. He was working hard, jobs, grass, cleaning washrooms, vacuuming the house, fixing this, fixing that, doing this, doing that, paying for this, paying for that, as she might have been also. But at the end of the day, I know that people don't like to believe it, but guys and girls need relationships for different reasons. Straight up. And some people don't like that reality, but it is a reality in most cases. So anyway, if those two systems collide, and they will eventually in some way, shape, or form, if that's your dynamic. And when they do, the covenant-minded person often loses. Not because they're wrong, but it's almost like they're fighting with both hands tied behind their back, and the other person seems to be fighting with both hands out. In other words, if they feel like blocking, they're going to block. If they feel like punching you straight in the nose, they're going to punch you straight in the nose. Where the other person, covenant minded, Christian minded, will think, okay, well, no, it wouldn't be right for me to do that. So I'm going to go on the defensive. I'm going to block. I'm going to fix. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to give this. I'm going to give that. And what happens, why a lot of those people end up cheating in a long-term or a marriage or moving on, you'd be surprised. It'd be a lot of the time is that eventually they're giving out of something that they don't have anymore. And they need somebody to fill up their cup at some point. And maybe they're not doing something that's turning off the other person. And the other person, for some reason, feels that they're right in holding back or holding out. Many times it's sexually. I'll just be straight up with you. And then eventually they're going to go and look elsewhere. Someone's going to open up, devil's going to open up somebody to come and offer themselves in a certain way that they've probably been neglected. And we know where that goes. I'm not going to blame it all on that, but I can honestly tell you a lot of relationships go that way. Anyway, when they do collide, the covenant person often loses, as I said. Not because they're wrong, not because sacrifice doesn't work, but because they're playing by different rules. They're trying to preserve something the other person may not be committed to preserving it. I think this is why so many relationships fail before they even really, really honestly begin. Yeah, you're together, but it really didn't begin until you can get over something like that. People focus on attraction before they focus on alignment. They ask, are they beautiful? Are they handsome? Are they exciting? Can they make me laugh? Are they successful? Do they have enough money? Do they have a nice car? Can they buy a nice car? Can they buy me a nice car? Can they pay the rent? Can they pay the mortgage? Can they buy me a bigger house? Can they take care of my kids? Do they make me feel good for long enough? But they forget to ask, what do they believe about commitment? What do they believe about forgiveness? What do they believe about sacrifice? What do they believe about Jesus? What do they believe about marriage? What do they believe about loyalty? What do they believe about keeping their word? Because attraction can get you into a relationship, trust me. Character is what keeps you there. The Bible is filled with examples of this, right? Samson, Solomon, David, all real great men, all blessed men, all powerful men. And yet each of them experienced enormous problems because of desire clouding their discernment. The issue wasn't simply, what they felt. The issue was who they chose. And really, that's the lesson. Many men think they're suffering because they're too nice. I don't think that's true, because I've seen many guys in those situations, things have been held out on, and you find out they're not really that nice because they've become bitter, working, but they're bitter. Many men are suffering because they never properly vetted the person they handed their heart to. They said, here you go. They saw beauty, they saw fireworks or chemistry, they saw potential, good, nice, sweet face, body, whatever. But they didn't spend enough time asking whether that person shared the same foundation. And when I say foundation, I'm not talking about liking the same movies, enjoying the same hobbies, or having chemistry. I'm talking about core beliefs. What do they believe about commitment when things stop being easy? What do they believe about sacrifice when they don't feel appreciated? What do they believe about forgiveness when they've been hurt? What do they believe about commitment when they're tired? What do they believe about marriage? What do they believe, or what do they do, rather, when they have a headache? What do they believe about covenant? What do they believe about keeping their word when keeping their word becomes difficult? What do they believe about getting a second job when one job is not cutting it? What do they believe about where you should live and what you can afford? Because this is where many people get into trouble in these different areas. They choose based on attraction, they choose based on chemistry, they choose based on excitement. And only later do they discover that the person they chose doesn't believe what they believe. One person views the relationship as a covenant, the other views it as an arrangement. One person believes commitment survives and can survive hardship. The other believes commitment survives satisfaction, emotional support. One person asks, "How do I fix this?" The other asks, "Do I still want this? Do I even like you?" And when those two worlds, when they collide, the covenant minded person often ends up carrying the weight of the entire relationship for as long as they can. And honestly, that's why the Bible warns believers about being unequally yoked. Not because one person is better, not because Christians are better, because a lot of the time, people who become believers before they were believers were a lot worse than a lot of the people they end up with, morally. But because two people operating from completely different definitions of commitment will eventually find themselves pulling in two different directions. And no amount of sacrifice can overcome a fundamental disagreement about what the relationship is supposed to be and what it is supposed to be able to go through and stay together. And that's the tragedy, really. Most people don't lose the relationship because they were unwilling to sacrifice. They lose because they attach themselves to someone who never shared the same understanding of sacrifice in the first place. That's what happened to Samson. That's what happened to Solomon. That's what happened to countless men and women throughout history. And if we're honest, it happens to many of us. The pain wasn't created by loving too much. The pain was created by giving covenant level commitment to someone who never truly shared your covenant level convictions. Because if you're prepared to sacrifice indefinitely for someone who isn't prepared to live by the same principles, eventually you're going to feel used, resentful, and exhausted. Not because sacrifice is wrong, but because sacrifice without shared values becomes one-sided. And that's the trap. The lesson isn't to become less loving. The lesson isn't to become less generous. The lesson isn't to become less committed and be a flounderer or a philandering person. The lesson is to become more discerning. Pay less attention to who excites you, who hits the spot. Pay more attention to who aligns with you and what you believe. Because the greatest relationship mistake may not be loving too much. It may be choosing the wrong person to love in the first place. Anyway, y'all, I'm MCM, and this is You're Probably Right. For more in-depth views and ideas, longer podcast episodes, check my profile out. Including this one, there's over 352. Anyhow, till next time, okay? Take care of yourself. Bye. Hey, come check out You're Probably Right podcast. Society is getting more unpredictable every day, but at the same time, predictable in its unpredictability. Say that 4 times real fast. Come with me as I attempt to find clarity in all the fog while staying way outside the box and kicking the box way down the road with my size 12 ducks. I use the Bible, experience, education, fortune, misfortune, life's lessons, life's mistakes to sort through all the mess. I talk about news, God, God, self-help, sports, sickness, health, music, parenting, love, humbleness, hurt, pain, joy, and all the things that might make you say, I never thought of it that way. Hopefully, anyway. Also, I take a stab at answering tough and not so tough questions, and all the while understand that, listen, sometimes you end up in the hot seat and there's no thermostat. Well, that's how it is here. And because there's no topic, very few topics off the table, Torontonians will understand that Doug Ford reference there. Hopefully the podcast will be helpful and uplifting. And hey, maybe you'll find your own private Idaho here somewhere. Hope to see you soon.